Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Commadtary about 2001, A Space Odyssey. So this is a favorite movie of mine. It's a favorite movie of a lot of people. It's up there with Citizen Kane. It's up there with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all those other movies you've heard recommended to you by crusty boomers. But this one, if you can summon up the patience to watch it, is fantastic. This movie and Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky. Those are two movies who it's hard to recommend them to anybody, even people my own age, because the only reason I pay attention to them is because I've taken a few film courses and I've also attempted to watch them and failed many times. Gotten a third of the way through, halfway through in one sitting. It's okay if you want to watch it like a mini-series. Watch it in 20-minute chunks, 45-minute chunks, whatever. Just make sure that you watch it at some point if you're interested in, films considered to be masterpieces. Have some, fucking smoke some weed before you watch it. It's one of those movies. You got to kind of be in a certain mindset. Have a few cans of cola and some weed, and keep yourself awake while watching this, because it's worth seeing, and I'm going to talk about why. This movie is going to be a slog. It's 2 hours and 28 minutes. The not torrent that I did not download of it is the 2 hour and 28 minute cut of it. In the first couple minutes, it's just an orchestral score. It's an introductory thing. It was a thing in old movies to do this, if you don't know, which is fine. I'm not criticizing people. You try to fucking explain something to people, and I don't know, I get neurotic and insecure, because I'm like, if I say to people, like, well, old movies used to have a thing at the beginning where they'd just have some music playing, people will be like, I already knew that. How dare you assume I didn't know that? I'm not stupid. You assumed I was stupid. I'm clicking off the video. Like, people are that fucking emotionally fragile. That's not what I'm saying. If you didn't know that, it doesn't mean you're stupid. You probably know way more than I do about some other subject. My point is just that old movies used to do this, which is why you're seeing a black screen, even if you're following along with me watching the actual film. So, again, most of you who are watching this commentary, I'm assuming, have seen this movie. A random person on Discord saw some of my other vids and said, why don't you do 2001? And I said, you know what, man? I will. Thank you for that encouragement. Thank you for that suggestion, random person. I appreciate it. Sometimes that's all I need is a little nudge from people. Okay, so at like 3 minutes in, we finally see the MGM logo, and weirdly, it's not the real lion. It is a logo of a lion, which for 1968 is not typical. Again, Stanley Kubrick is the guy who directed this, and he's very weird. You can look up all sorts of conspiracies about him. I'm going to have to touch on those during this movie, but we're not going to do that yet. We're going to save that for later. This is a long-ass movie. This intro is, of course, famous. We start out on the dark side of the moon. The moon lowers, reveals the Earth, with the sun rising past it. So in this shot, half of the Earth would be looking at daylight, the other half would be looking at the moon. But if the Earth is perfectly in between the two, as it is, or as it seems to be at the beginning of this shot, that would mean that there would have been, the moon would have been, I don't think it would have been an eclipse. I think the moon just there would have been no moon for certain people, depending on their position, because if the Earth is right between the sun and the moon, it would be blocking the moon completely. So I think that's a lunar eclipse. I'm pretty sure. So maybe that means something. I don't know. I haven't done a ton of reading about this movie beyond the sort of surface level stuff that people have said about it. I'm sure people have dissected this with a mental scalpel 2001 times. I'm sure there's... I could literally probably spend the next 30 years reading theories about this movie. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you my take on it based on my random experience and shit that I've seen and read about it. So, of course, this movie begins at the dawn of man, yes. Some great backgrounds in this, too. Unless you're watching the 4K Blu-ray, You can't really tell that these are matte painted backgrounds. They're very good. Even for the time, they're like incredible. They look better than CGI until you get to 4K. Then you can actually see the fucking brush strokes on the painting in the background. And it's like, oh, that's a fucking painting. But of course, in 1968, when this came out, nobody would be noticing that. Whether they're in the theater or in some smaller theater with a smaller projector, they wouldn't have been able to notice. But you can kind of see the matte line. And of course, people who ascribe to the whole moon landing conspiracy thing will point to this movie as a as a way of rehearsing the film techniques that were used to fake the moon landing. That's the story behind this movie, if you haven't heard it already. It's that Kubrick basically used this movie as an excuse to test the techniques that would be used to fake the moon landing. You know, you're creating a better cultural narrative, a better story, a better religious type narrative to hypnotize your people or your vampire thralls in your society better than another culture could. Because you can look at cultures as a series of competing narratives. And you can actually see the brushstrokes in this, too, in this scene with the little monkey skeleton. You can see the brushstrokes on the sky. They're done in a sort of triangular pattern. You can see them here, too. I'm just watching a 1080p not torrent of this movie. Also, it's interesting, the apes, the shot of them eating there, there's a rock to their left that looks like a skull, which I think is cool. There's a humanoid face in the moon that's kind of creepily accurate. You know, everyone knows the man in the moon. You know, it's strange that it's such a you know, it's so similar to a human face. It's a bit strange, and that's the side of the moon that faces us. You know, we don't see the other side. Whatever reason they give for that, oh, the rotational cosmic whatever, like, oh, the orbit of the moon and the orbit of Earth, they rotate the same somehow, so we only ever see one side. You know, again, I've read all the conspiracies about this, guys. Don't get lost in that shit. It's a waste of time. Either it'll be revealed at some point or it won't, and either way, it probably doesn't matter for your life in general. Wow, you can really see the matte painting lines here. Holy shit, this is a bad version of this movie that I'm watching. Anyway, these are all establishing shots. It's just, oh, you know, humans started out as monkeys, you know, before something happened, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, that changed everything. What could that be? So we just saw one of these fantastic ape-costumed people being attacked by a real leopard. I don't know how the fuck they trained the leopard not to actually kill the guy. This is back in the Wild West era of filmmaking where it's like, we're going to have a leopard attack you. I hope you're okay with that, Bill. I know you're being paid $2 an hour, which in 1968 money is $18 an hour, but in any case, it's a hell of a thing to agree to. You sure you want to do it?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm a 1968 man. I'll do anything. I'm brave and cool.
All right. Your descendants are going to be fucked by plastics, though. They're going to turn into women.
What was that?
Nothing. Just let the ape attack you. All right. And take. And action. So the absurdity of this little opener is that these apes are fighting over basically a very... they're fighting over a fresh water source. And I gotta say, too, the landscape in this part of the film, it really does look like Mars, doesn't it? That's interesting. Fighting over water on Mars. Not that much of it. Most of it's frozen on the poles, if you believe... you know, what people say about that planet, which I do. Straight up, just to put my cards on the table, I believe that we live on a globe. I believe that we live in a solar system with other planets, blah, blah, blah. If you want to, if that bothers you, you know, you can go fuck yourself. I can't be asked to devote mental energy to making myself more insane than I already am by believing in a bunch of crap. That takes mental effort. It takes energy. I think that that's the point of those random narratives, is to siphon attention and energy from you so that you're less productive and you have a shittier life and you're more susceptible to manipulation. So don't get too deep into conspiracy theories, especially with movies like this. I'm going to do my best to talk about what's in the movie symbolically and what I personally think it means. I'm not going to talk too much about conspiracies. Of course, I say that now. We'll see what I actually end up saying. That's part of the fun, guys. You know, I'm just This is all improvised. I don't write my scripts beforehand. I turn on my mic and I turn on the movie and I talk. So that's what this is. That's what all my videos are. The Let's Plays, the commentary, everything. I don't write scripts beforehand. If that wasn't abundantly clear by how shitty my content is, I don't do that. You know, this is how I prefer to create, is in the moment. There's no better way to do it, I think. I think it's the best way to make anything, is to just let yourself do things. And then, you know, you edit it after. If you're not me, you edit your stuff afterwards, or you hire an editor. You know, that's the way to make things good. So I should mention the ape costumes. Of course, these are fantastic. These are like top tier. It's funny to watch this and then watch Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes is also very good. It may have been the same effects artists who worked on those costumes, but in this movie, they really do look goddamn fantastic. Like the way the mouths can move and the way the lips look. It's like they teleported actual proto-humans through a gateway from back in time, and then just corralled them onto set with bananas or something, and we're like, no, go here. We need to get this shot. Come on. Kubrick, I swear to God, if this doesn't work out, we spent so much money on that interdimensional portal, that time portal, we're gonna fucking cut your balls off for this. And Kubrick's like, I don't even know what Kubrick sounds like. He'd be like, no, don't worry. It will work. I'm a dark wizard. This illusion will be perfect. Because it isn't an illusion. The illusion is that it is an illusion. Anyway. So they're freaked out. They're starving to death. You know, they're struggling. It do be like that. The struggle of evolution. And all of a sudden, something happens. Now, the monolith. I'm going to try to get this out of the way so that I don't repeat myself later on. The monolith is language. The monolith is pattern recognition sophisticated enough to create language, or it's language influencing the brain through some kind of electromagnetic signal from space that mutated the physical structure of the proto-human ape brain to make it able to communicate in a way that is unprecedented, or would have been unprecedented for the time. It's like having a psychic power that's bound or mediated by runes, glyphs, characters, or speech patterns. Even if you don't have a written language, different types of communication are bound to different sound patterns. That's differentiation, that's sorting. Sorting objects is really what the monolith represents. It's really just an avatar for the act of sorting things. Like, these apes are just foraging. They're mindless. They're not conscious. They look for things that they know they can eat comfortably without feeling sick or dying, and they just eat those things. And then they fuck each other because they want to, and then they die. They're not picking at grains of sand and making a pile of red sand and a pile of orange sand and a pile of yellow sand. That's what the monolith makes you do. The monolith is like autism, basically. It's just, you guys need to look at patterns and recognize them more than you are. Now, there are several theories about evolution. I'm not going to talk too much about those because I don't know enough about them. I know about this movie and what types of ideas it's trying to invoke. What it's saying with the object, with the monolith, is at some point in human evolution, pattern recognition and sorting became sophisticated enough to constitute the invention of language. Or language, already a sort of a weird thing, an alien thing, came to Earth. Or if you're religious, God happened, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. The Bible literally tells you this. It tells you what most science fiction that has any linguistic bent to it is screaming at you. Language is God. God is language. God is not a man in the sky with a white beard. God is the ability to write, the ability to speak, the ability to communicate, the ability to recognize patterns, the ability to create patterned objects, even things like architecture and sculpture. That's what God is. God is the ability to recognize, manipulate, and utilize patterns in matter. That's what God is. Literally, the Bible literally tells you this. I don't think it's being metaphorical. I don't think it's being poetic. It's literally like Guys, language is God. If you obey language, you're obeying God. You don't have to go to a church and pray, you know. You don't have to feed heroin-addicted hobos soup that they're going to vomit out an hour later after drinking a few 40s. That's not what worshiping God is. Worshiping God is worshiping language. And unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of cultures that take this to an extreme, and they degenerate because they don't take the human body into account. Another thing that a lot of religious texts say, whether you're talking about any of the Abrahamic texts or any of the other ones, the Eastern religions, whatever, is you have to maintain your body because your body is a vessel for language. Your DNA is language. You are language. Like, your DNA is a pattern. It's a way of instantiating data in matter in the same way that we do with hard drives, where you write magnetically on a disk using differently magnetically charged points on that disk to represent ones and zeros. Your DNA is the exact same thing. It's just using a double helix of protein to represent different amino acids, which in turn encode commands for your cells to replicate different proteins. Like, your cells are protein factories, and they're commanded by a language that we call DNA. So again, I'm talking about a lot of random crap. It's important because this movie is trafficking in these things symbolically, and because Kubrick is such a genius, he's able to incept these ideas, and it's taken us fucking 60, 70 years to figure out what the fuck he was saying. If anybody figured this out in the 70s, you know, maybe they did. I think it was subconscious first, because things that are communicated symbolically, if you're a non-autistic person, they come to you subconsciously. If you're autistic, you can't go to a bar and talk to a girl, but you can watch this movie and go, oh, it's about language. You know, that's the bargain. That's the demonic price that autistic people have to pay just for being born, which is a great deal. And I'm saying that both ironically and unironically. You know, it has its advantages, depending on the era that you're living in. Sometimes the autistic people are the only ones that make it. But anyway, so language comes to Earth, language comes to this plane from somewhere else, whether it evolves internally or it comes through externally, or maybe a starving monkey, particularly a female one, who had a stillborn monkey child, ate the child, and the adrenochrome and other minerals and nutrients in the blood of that dead infant jump-started some process of evolution in the brain, or passed on some parasite that could only be passed on through, like, eating something's brain or drinking its blood. That's another creepy, occult, dark interpretation of this. I don't advocate for that. Even if it's true, it's demoralizing. You should believe something else. Believe something fake. Other than that, it's not a very nice kind of interpretation of this. There are certain times where you do really have to avoid cognitohazards, even if they're true, because they will ruin your life. And you can't make any use of yourself or your life if you're obsessed with finding the actual truth. Take it from me. The real truth, the real, actual, hardcore, blank truth, usually it just fries your brain. It's like trying to look God in the eye. You know, you'll just be vaporized. You know, you'll be rendered. You'll turn into one of these apes. And before the monolith arrived, you'll be stuck in that timeline where the monolith never showed up. That's hell, where it's just this forever. Imagine not even having a bone club. You know, you're never gonna have a gaming PC in that timeline. That's never gonna happen. Technology's never gonna evolve. You're never gonna have air conditioning. That's my hell. Not having AC. Anyway, though, so because language has arrived and has changed the brains physically, which is what language does, the language center of the human brain mutates physically and changes and contorts and grows abnormally. It grows differently in people who know a language versus wild humans that are literally never taught a spoken or a written language. Their brains look physically different. So language has arrived in one tribe of apes first. That just happens to be where the monolith showed up, or where it knew that it should show up, whatever it is. It shows up, and these apes have an advantage now because they know language better. They are more adept at pattern recognition, they can communicate better in between one another, and they know how to manipulate matter better than other apes do. But the other apes are eventually going to catch the language virus eventually. They're eventually going to catch up, right? And that's what's happening right now in our history is we have different cultures that speak different languages, and they're all mutations of the same force. This scene's important too. This little satellite we're seeing at about 20 minutes and 14 seconds, there's missiles in it. So the bone being thrown into the air, this is something I didn't recognize till I'd seen this movie like 5 times. The bone that gets thrown up into the air, when I first saw this movie, the first 2 times I saw it, I thought, oh, it's like a representation of how we've evolved. Like we've gone from beating each other with clubs to having satellites. The satellites are also clubs. They're weapons. They're orbital nukes. So the irony of that scene is it's meant to, and again, there's classical music playing. It's meant to represent the fact that we actually haven't evolved. That in all the time between the poignant opening scene that you've seen and this, all we've done is make the bone club into a bigger bone club. That's how slowly we're evolving. That's how little progress we've actually made. If you interpret progress as some kind of, enlightened ascension or advancement beyond the need for violence, which I don't know if that's what that really is. Maybe there's violence in the 12th dimension. It just takes on a different form. There's wars between the machine elves. Who the fuck knows? Maybe violence exists everywhere. The point is, in this movie, Kubrick kind of pulls the wool over your eyes for the first of many times by going, oh, you think that we've evolved? All we've done is make a bigger bone, And that makes this movie depressing. It makes these scenes that used to make me like emotional when I was a kid, when I first saw this, it makes them very depressing. Because all they're really meant to show is that we have all these technologies of illusion, but they just cloak the primal violence that still exists in our human forms. They don't actually go beyond it. They don't actually address the issue at its core. They don't address it on a genetic level. All they are doing is providing giant cribs for us to rattle around in. They're not actually changing what we are as beings. All they're doing is glossing over and then glossing over the gloss ad infinitum until you have magnetic shoes, It's convenient, it's comfortable, but there's still competition, there's still violence, there's still conflict. And of course, the pen becoming the satellite, right? The satellite then becomes, or the bone becoming the satellite, excuse me. The satellite then is contrasted with this pen, which the special effects for this are flawless, man. Like, that looks like pure magic. I've seen how they do it. I'm not going to get into how they got that pen to appear to be floating. Again, no CGI in 1968, okay? And the actors are performing very well, too. They're pretending to float. They're doing a very good job. Or they're underwater. Or they're in a jet that's skimming the atmosphere where gravity stops working for a second and things appear to be floating. Either way, it's a good scene. I never noticed this till just now, too, but the space station looks like a spoked wheel. So it's almost like we're inventing the wheel. Like, Kubrick is, I don't know, that's my interpretation. That's not, there's no way that's intentional. That's a structure, that's a design that's meant to evoke the theories about artificial gravity, where you would need a structure that looks like that. That's the reason it looks like a wheel. The unintentional optics of it, to me, in this moment, while watching this, I'm thinking about spoked wheels. And I'm thinking again about how this movie is suggesting overtly with the bone to orbital nuke scene. Overtly, it's suggesting that we haven't progressed as far as we think we have, or that we've gone in the wrong direction, which is what HAL 9000 eventually typifies. But this space station, the fact that it, intentionally or not, it looks like a spoked wheel. What the movie's saying with this grandiose space opera sci-fi series of scenes is just, oh, well, congratulations, you guys just did the cosmic equivalent of inventing the wheel. Like, you're that far back. You're really barely at the beginning. You feel badass. You feel like gods. You feel like Icarus, right? Oh, I made some wax wings. Don't misinterpret your achievements just because you have a space station and some sort of craft that can take you from Earth to orbit. That does not mean that you are in any way ready to connect with the rest of the galaxy. That doesn't mean you're ready at all, We could probably go to Mars, and it would be like, well, congratulations, you went to the closest semi-habitable planet. That doesn't mean you're ready for anything. There's other indicators that you're ready, and clearly we haven't met them yet, even in this movie's very, I think, overly, for the most part, overall, this movie is optimistic about human evolution and about the future and about how we use language. I think it's an optimistic film. It's very tense, and it's very sort of esoteric and creepy, and very symbolically dense. Like, I could make 5 reviews of this movie, and each one would be different. I'd be prompted to make a different association in my mind. I'd be prompted to make a different take. But anyway, remember that a few minutes ago we were looking at monkeys, and these are those same monkeys. They're simply coated in a nice woolen veneer. Ah, yes, the camel hair and horsehair suit. It really does cover up the fact that you're still a retarded ape. You are still using language like an idiot. You've printed big numbers and big labels on things, and you're shaking hands. Oh, very good. You two apes are okay with each other. You're not going to try to cannibalize each other in competition for a pool of stagnant water. Very good. Obviously, you're gods now. Obviously, you're highly evolved. I'm being a bit hard on the movie. In the 60s, this would have been insane. Man, don't you wish that going through security at an airport was this simple? I think it will be in about 10 years with AI. It'll just be, look into this camera, there's an AI chick there, there's no person to pat you down, there's no disgruntled TSA worker, it's just, look into this camera, we'll know it's you, we know your internet history, maybe you're a perv, but you're not a dangerous perv. Whatever. We'll let you through, go on ahead. Just say your name so we know it's you, And I fucking love the aesthetic of this. Oh my god, man. The fucking pink bubblegum. It's like cherry bubblegum chairs and all the fucking sans serif text. When the whole space of the area is consistent in a single style like this, it makes sense. It's like everything is angles and clean lines except the chairs, which are soft shapes, and they're red, like human blood, right? Like a meat being is supposed to sit on this thing. The conveyance is so... It's like subtle, and at the same time it's like really blunt. Like the space is a machine, the chair is a human shape because it's meant to accommodate a human body. So there's this clear separation between the artificiality of the space station itself and its accommodating furniture. The furniture is welcoming, it's inviting, it's saying to you clearly, to your subconscious, I'm comfortable for a human body. The space station itself can't do that. It has to be an environment, it has to be an artificial planet. It can't be comforting to you. It needs to be clean and efficient and very strict and stern and cold and metallic and machinic. But the chairs need to be comfortable. And it says to people, don't be creeped out, even though we have to have the station be what it is. You can sit here and relax. Like that contrast, having those two types of objects right next to each other is crazy. Like the balls to pull that off in the 60s as an aesthetic in this movie. Aesthetically, it's nuts. So anyway, we have this video call system here. And there's an interesting line in this. It's very quick. And it's Haywood's daughter. He asks her, what do you want for your birthday? And she says, a bush baby. Now, a bush baby is a tree-dwelling primate. It's one of those monkeys with little marsupial-looking things with sort of suction-cuppy fingers and big eyes that eats fruit in a tree. And it's native to Africa. So she's basically asking her dad, can I have a less evolved primate as my pet? Can you get me a pet that's a less evolved primate? I could talk for an hour about what that implies, okay? I'll leave it to you guys to imagine. But no, all it's implying is she wants a little monkey as a pet. That's all it's saying. Nothing else. This movie was made in 1968, okay? Keep that in mind. But regardless of what that's saying specifically or politically or racially or whatever, That's an incredible line that I've never heard people talk about. Is the daughter wants a bush baby. She wants something that resembles a human infant. That's the real thing they're trying to say, I think. I'm making sort of subtle jokes that are stupid. But that's what the daughter is saying. She's like, I want a lesser evolved being that I can try to evolve because I am language, and we are all language. We are all possessed by an alien virus from outer space called language, called pattern recognition, that's trying to prompt us to do something or terraform the planet or make something or just to evolve in a particular way. Imagine if language had never gotten to Earth. Maybe we would have evolved psychic powers and would have had no need for verbal or textual communication. Maybe language is evil and it replaces your latent psychic abilities. Maybe language is satanic. Maybe all of it is. Maybe we're in hell because we know language. That's the real black pill. Black as ink. Okay, so this is a great scene. This is the two monkey tribes beating each other with clubs. Redressed. That's what this scene is. Instead of using clubs, they're using words. I came not to bring peace, but a sword. Sword is words. You just move the S to the other side. You move the snake from one end to the other. And the word sword becomes the word words. So their swords that they're using, the clubs they're using, are words. They're having a linguistic battle. There's a circular table in the center, like a pool of water. There are drinks on the fucking table. 3 of those drinks are glasses of water, or they're vodka. They look like water. This is the 2 ape tribes fighting over the same fucking watering hole. They're just doing it in orbit. They haven't evolved. They're monkeys. Oh, return to monkey? We're still there. You think we've evolved past that? This movie is saying we haven't. It's not doing so pessimistically. It's not meant to be, I think, a pessimistic thing. But as I've gotten older, I've realized what this movie's really trying to say. And it's kind of like when you rewatch Forrest Gump and you realize this movie is about how depressing the fantasy of the American dream is and how it only applies to a retard fake character who is luckier than any human in existence. He's obedient, but he has godlike luck. Forrest Gump is depressing as hell. I actually don't think you should rewatch it. If you liked it when you were young and you're like, oh, I'll rewatch it because Madman recommended it, don't. It will depress the shit out of you if you get it. What it's trying to say to you is I don't think it's demoralizing intentionally, but it's depressing as hell. It's a feel-good movie if you're an idiot, which is why it's genius, because it both placates the idiot viewers who don't get what it's really trying to say, and it legitimizes the opinions of the other viewers watching it who go, oh God, I'm glad somebody else understands how depressing reality is. You know, it placates the smart people by mimicking their cynicism, which is, again, another form of emotional manipulation. Now, as Haywood leaves, right, they say something in Russian. I've looked up what the translation is, because it's Russia versus America, 1968, Cold War. That doesn't matter. It's two groups of apes. That's all that matters. But what they say in Russian, I looked this up. Apparently, I don't know how accurate this is, but the translation is basically what you'd expect. Dr. Shmizlov, he says something like, well, Haywood's, he's hiding what he's really doing here. And one of the women goes, you know, oh yeah, I guess, you know, he can't say what he wants to say. It's very banal. It's not relevant. But what I do want to say about that exchange, which I didn't have the time to say while it was happening, is that during that scene's the most tense scene in the movie, because it's the linguistic equivalent of the ape fight. And Haywood, of course, in the story, has been called up to the moon base on Clavius, as far as we know at this point in the narrative, to address an outbreak.
Oh, we've had a COVID outbreak on the up on Clavius.
Dr. Schmeeslov goes, well, COVID could clearly spread to our base. We should be given all the facts, Dr. Floyd. And he goes, yes, I know, but COVID may be a psyop, but I'm afraid I can't tell you what the actual purpose of that event was. And he goes, oh, okay, well. And then the creepiest thing in that scene is just the social awkwardness. Like, that's portrayed in a kind of upper-class way as being the worst thing. Like, prudes and upper-class poncy fucks who've never had to work a day in their life are like, oh, well, the worst thing is social awkwardness. That's like acid on my brain. Oh, God, I would never want to be rude to anyone. That's worse than killing a man. Like, the fucked up thing about that is the stakes are still there. They're still primal stakes. It's still a competition to try to kill someone. And if you're killing them socially, that will eventually kill them physically. It'll just take a bit of time. If you deprive someone of social opportunities because you've judged them, you eventually reach a point where your judgment of that person, if it was powerful enough, if it had the power to affect their means of gaining income, you have effectively beaten that person to death with a pig bone. You've just done it in a roundabout way. You've done it in a language-based way. You've done it with lies, deceit. It's taken 10 years. That person still ends up on the street and they're dead. The action that you took still had the same effect. It just took a little more time. The time it took for the ape arm to swing the bone club into the victim's head, instead of taking 2 seconds, it takes 2 years. Does it matter if the result is the same? So that scene, the tension in it, is real. Because if you're in a situation in your life where social points matter that much, if you're the child of some Victorian family and your livelihood depends on being a cool, impressive actor to other Victorian families, you gotta take that shit seriously, man. 'Cause that's your watering hole you're fighting over. It's just dressed up in social niceties and traditions and habits and language. But it still matters, because you still got a body you gotta drag around. You're still made of meat. That meat is gonna die. And the only choice you really have is, am I gonna die comfortably after achieving some shit, or am I gonna die after going through hell? And again, this movie is making the point that language does not evolve humanity. Language is not something that is meant to elevate or ascend us. It is not the right path. Language is just a tool. And whether it came from somewhere cosmic or whether it arose in our own evolution, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that it is not a god. And I know that contradicts what I said earlier about, I am the Word, I am God. All that is, all that a lot of religion is it is an expression of consciousness and pattern recognition being aware of its own utility and its own significance. So I'll try to say that another way. I want to make this clear. Our awareness of the importance of language and of pattern recognition and of aesthetics is important. That is a good thing. And it's also a natural thing. And it's also influenced by the very language and pattern that we want to cultivate a greater awareness of. But it's not God. It's not spiritual in the ultimate sense. I think if there is a God that exists, it's not language. Language is material. Language is bound and comprised of configurations of matter and of energy. If there's a force that made this universe, which there must have been something. The prime mover argument is, if anybody cares about any of this crap, there had to have been a prime mover or a cause. The Big Bang happened. Okay, maybe that's true. If that's true, what caused it? Again, personally, if you want to know my view, I think we're in a simulation, a video game, a very good one. This is very fucking good, I gotta say. If it's a game. It's a good fucking game. This is Baldur's Gate 25. Like, this is some iteration of some game. Still has to be a developer of the game. There has to be a server admin. There have to be people who apply patches. These beings, if they exist, if this theory has any credence, these would be what we would call, or would have called in the past, gods. And again, that could be totally wrong. That could be a conflation of the prevalence of tech terms in our culture these days, because our society is very technophilic right now. We have a fetish for technology, literally. So again, I'm not saying that that's some sort of magical truth. I'm just saying, this movie is directly evoking these types of ideas. That's why it's so interesting, because it did this in 1968. Like, holy fuck. Can you imagine seeing this in 1968? I'm surprised people didn't just look at this and go nuts. Like, this is a lot. This is a lot to digest in 1968, even subconsciously. Like, holy shit. Can you imagine? Also, this scene with the craft being lowered into the docking bay, the craft looks like a face. It looks like the face on the moon. The two windows, and there's a wrinkle that looks like a nose, and then there's a part in the outer part of the craft looks like a mouth. Again, it's all a sort of man on the moon type of thing. Truman Show is another movie I should do commentary on. That's what that's reminding me of, the moon being an observation base. That's a fantastic idea in that movie. That's very, very cool. I gotta say, too, I love the fashion in this movie. Like, the fucking gay guy fashion dude in me is like, I just love that Argyle suit. And the fact that there's no ties, it lets the suit just express itself. Like, its pattern is just open, and you got, like, an undervest going on there, and the ties are, like, they're not, like, those corny Mexican, like, little Texan kind of fucking string bulb things. They're just a nice little bulb. They're not a bow tie. They're just a nice little like gem, like a little orb at the base of your neck. That's just like so beautiful. So anyway, Haywood's giving his speech here. Or he's about to here. We're at 42 minutes, 18 seconds. Notice that there's a blue and white flag on the right and an American flag on the left. Isn't that interesting? A blue flag with a white star shape in the center is on the right, and on the left we have an American flag. What could that be talking about? I wonder. I love Haywood's speech, man. I have this whole movie memorized straight up. I'm a fucking dork. I'll say it. If it weren't for two very angelic, generous, understanding, beautiful human beings, I would be a virgin. If it weren't for two incredible beings that came to me in times of great need, I would be a virgin dork. But fortunately, I'm just a dork. Because I've memorized this whole fucking movie. I've memorized the whole fucking thing. And so he's talking about, like, well, the COVID hoax, we can't really tell them what it's about. We can't tell humanity that Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune have or will be converted into white dwarf stars to provide more real estate for our expanding civilization. The people on Earth are still retarded. They have too much monkey parasite brain crap in their bloodstream and DNA. And it's proving very difficult to be able to ascend or elevate them. We can't really tell them what's going on. This Kubrick film, though, is the first attempt to do so. This speech is an allegory for the film. The film is trying to red pill you about something. It's trying to tell you some important shit, and it's necessarily vague. And what you do have to remember too is that it's way more vague than a bunch of subsequent films have been about a bunch of different things. Fucking Alien Resurrection is more blunt about parasite infection than this movie is about language, even though Alien Resurrection's a piece of crap. This movie is trying to sort of, I think, set a foundation, make a rock upon which a church could be built, you might say. It's trying to provide a foundation for future films to red pill people slowly and carefully in a way that doesn't kill them. Despite how deceptive a lot of things may seem in your life, and a lot of illusions might seem like they don't respect your intelligence, it's not you. I think if you interpret those types of things in a positive way, you might interpret them as benevolent to a fault. Like, if there's anything above us, whether it's a human galactic consortium or a group of aliens or a god or a group of gods or just people on other planets that we've colonized that are looking back at Earth, which is maybe an insane asylum or a containment zone for bad genetics. Whatever's the case, those things all mean the same thing. And I don't think in any of those cases, in any of those interpretations, that those groups would be evil. Maybe I'm too trusting. Maybe I'm too optimistic. I don't think any of those groups are evil. I think evil is a thing that we make when we misinterpret reality. I think evil is I think evil is ignorance. And I think when you're ignorant about something, you assume the worst. Because when your lizard brain, your ape brain takes over, you're going to assume everything's a tiger in the woods trying to kill you. I do that. I have chronic anxiety. I assume that all the time. I have to fight it. And I'm not fighting the tiger in the woods. I'm fighting myself. I'm fighting my own assumptions. I'm fighting my own brain, my ape brain, my lizard brain. That's where the anxiety comes from. It comes from me. It doesn't come from something external. The logical part of me knows that. And that's the case for a lot of people, man. Anxiety is not a small thing. It's a big deal these days. And it can come from any type of trauma. It can come from multiple types. It can come from genetics and chemistry. But it will destroy you. I talked about this in one of the Baldur's Gate videos, The Demon of Fear, where I said fear is the worst thing because fear distorts everything else. If you're a hateful person, it's much easier to learn to channel that hate into something productive. If you're afraid, you can't even do anything. You're cucked from the start. That's why I've always been sympathetic towards anxious people. It's like if you're afraid, if you're anxious and you can't help that, that's the worst thing. That will hold you back more than any other evil part of yourself. Fear prevents you from confronting anything else, including itself. It's so insidious that it prevents you from confronting itself. It's a self-defensive, self-contained hell. And when you're chronically afraid, I truly believe it's worth doing anything. If you got to become an alcoholic to kill the fear, I'm okay with that. You got to become Prometheus and have your liver eaten out by a vulture, do it. Get rid of the fear. If there's no better thing that you have access to, and there probably is, I'm not advocating you should become a drunk. I'm just saying, if none of the other methods work for you, if you genuinely try them, if you're genuinely, committed to trying other methods and that doesn't work, do whatever works. You're going to destroy yourself eventually, but we all die. I mean, the benevolent, Mormon who doesn't even drink coffee, he's never tried any drugs ever, he's going to die of a heart attack because he likes steaks, or he's going to die when he's found fucking 12-year-olds and the FBI shoots him in the forehead. He's going to die of something, And something's going to kill you. If you know what the thing is that's going to kill you, maybe you can slow the process. Maybe you can benefit from it through moderation, Another thing I want to say really quick, just going back to the movie. They eat these fake sandwiches, and the guy's like, "Oh, what is this, ham?" And he's like, "Oh, something like that." And he goes, "Oh, they're getting better at it all the time." It's like recycled sewage protein that's been compressed and filtered into some kind of fake meat. That's the implication. Is this sort of there's some sort of communist dystopian food system going on here. Because the food is not real. It's not real pork. It's not real chicken. Why the fuck? Why the fuck would any society who's got bases on other planets want to send chicken and pork through space. Can you imagine the energy that would take? Why not synthesize it out of existing materials to the best of your ability? Like the most that you could do that, you would have to do that. You would have to be efficient. Inefficiency in space is death. If you're not efficient, you die out. You run out of energy, your ships don't have enough fuel, etc., etc. You have to be militantly, machinically efficient. But the problem that this movie points out is that if you apply that type of mentality to human embodiment and consciousness, you turn humans into monsters. So there has to be a dividing line. There has to be a point where you say, no, this part of ourselves is going to stay human. The rest can be taken over by machines. There has to be a dividing point. There has to be a sorting point. Language and programming are all sorting mechanisms. Something has to be sorted into its own lane, into its own environment. So, all right, we're at 51 minutes or so. We're approaching the monolith here. I feel like this might be a good place to end things. I might come back in a few minutes and keep recording this, but I think I need a break. So I'm going to go ahead and just end the recording here for now. So I'll just say peace out when I'm going to end things. So 29, 51, 30, 31, 32, 33, peace out. Hello everyone, we are back with more of the commentary. So we are back at 51:36 or so, and yeah, we've got some very dramatic music playing if you're actually listening to the soundtrack. Again, soundtrack for this movie is great. I haven't really said much about it. Despite the movie's length, I don't really feel like I have a lot of time to talk about the soundtrack, so I'll just say it's great. Check it out. It's very good. The classical music combined with the new stuff, again, it's Kubrick, He's going to be artistically specific about everything that he allowed to be part of this movie. So, of course, this scene is meant to mirror the scene we saw earlier of the apes encountering the monolith. They're encountering it again. And they touch it again. Again? There's this sort of potentially cynical interpretation that this scene evokes, that humanity has not evolved significantly, despite the fact that they found the monolith again. Okay, the monolith, the dungeon master of reality, this inhuman force, moved itself to the moon and buried itself. And it's like, okay, if the apes can find me once, that's the starting point. That's the favor, that I'll give. The second time, it's going to require some effort. And it's like, okay, if they find me buried on the moon, and if a group of them finds me again, then it's like, all right, you've ascended, you congratulations, you've leveled up. This is level 2. You can now pick a trait. you can now pick something. That whole mentality, that whole way of viewing life as a D&D game, I don't want to advocate that as some kind of raison d'etre or some kind of like infallible way of existing. If you have a different way of navigating reality, that's if it works for you, then it works for you. But this method, if you're lost and you don't find religion favorable, which to be fair, it's been polluted and mutated and abused and changed by all sorts of powerful people. I get it. The D&D method is not the worst. It has its advantages. It seems to be favored by a bunch of creepy cults, so, join them or avoid them based on your own preference. But keep that in mind. That method can be used by just you personally. You don't have to involve yourself in any group that you're not comfortable with. So we have this electromagnetic transmission that's fucking with all the brains of all these poor people. I had another person message me on Discord recently who was like, do you know that 75% of the human genome is responsive to electromagnetism in ways that we don't understand. And I was like, can you give me a source on that? And they were like, oh, maybe later. And I don't want to disparage the person. That's a cool idea. It's just, I'm not going to believe that without a source. But at the same time, if you watch this movie, the electromagnetism seems to be important. The human brain does have an electromagnetic field that it maintains in order to function. And that electromagnetic field can be fucked with. In the same way that bees are influenced by cell phone signals, human brains can be influenced by different signal frequencies. Look up Havana syndrome, which is something that U.S. intelligence agents experienced when they were stationed in Cuba. It was a very serious thing. It caused migraines, it caused all sorts of nasty physical ailments, and the speculation is that it was a communist or a Russian technology that was weaponized against Western agents. So we have the sperm ship, the cum ship. Here it is. Coming to the giant egg of Jupiter to impregnate it with human presence. I feel like I criticized Alien Resurrection for being, intentionally or not, a kind of creepy, like, antinatalist thing. This movie's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like, well, we should reproduce, A cosmic sperm should impregnate a cosmic planet and produce a cosmic glowing blue baby egg, which is what happens in this movie. And of course, we have this terrific scene with this actor going around this rotating set. The people in coffins are very, very Egyptian. It's like, yeah, USA is Israel, the Egypt is the US, blah, 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 Pick your conspiracy. This movie caters to all of it. So he's getting his workout in. Good man. He's got his namby-pamby 1960s white shorts on, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care that we're basically treated to an upskirt of this poor fucker. In his time, there was no term like that. What a time to be alive. And then we have Hal. It's almost like it's the sun, as in soul, as in our star, but trapped in a creepy glass case. Kind of creepy. That's all I'm saying. He's having his 1960s TV dinner. He's having his reheated food. His convenient little food tray. And Bowman is coming down here on the... I mean, these shots are... I could gush for an hour about how impressive these shots are, but other people have already done that. You can look up how they were done. It's basic techniques. The room rotated. They synced the cameras with the rotation of the room. They did a whole bunch of shit. Very well done. Incredible. Like, what movie? Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy is cool because the lines are quippy and the CGI is good. This shit will never be done in our lifetime. Not even the most ambitious indie horror film will be this good. This is out of this world. Oh my god, what a pun. He's got a fucking iPad, a straight up iPad. In 1968. Again, I talked about how in Alien Resurrection, they're like, well, the Bible would look like a book. Here you have a movie from 30 fucking years before that, where they were cognizant enough, or they hired enough time travelers, to make the technology make sense for the time period that they're speculating about. It's like, well, of course they'd have a fucking iPad. Why the fuck would anything look like a fake book? It makes no sense. I'm addicted to talking about Alien Resurrection. That movie is like a well or a mineral vein of badness. It's very easy to just rant about it forever. One thing, too, about Hal that makes him interesting is he's almost the dimension of a smartphone. If you remove the speaker from the bottom, which wouldn't be necessary, right? Look at this shot here of him. It's almost like it's the exact dimensions of a smartphone. Isn't that interesting? Even the food trays, they're very sort of they're almost the exact dimension of a smartphone. And again, this guy, Bowman, he's looking at a fucking iPad. And everything's white, everything's got the Apple aesthetic, right? The bite the apple, drink the blood, eat the infant, suck the knowledge down, learn the language, become a slave to the pattern, all that type of shit. It's all here. It's all here in 1968. Egyptian coffins. I mean, for fuck's sake. This movie, I can't even believe it got made, man. Even in the time that it was made. It's unbelievable. Watching this in 2024, I think, is equally as shocking as seeing it in 1968. That's what makes this movie so nuts. When you watch it in 2024, I think enough aspects of it are far enough ahead of the time in which it was made. The level of awe and incredulity. It's like this was made by time travelers from the year 2500. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem like it should exist. It's like the inverse of Alien Resurrection, right? Alien Resurrection, it shouldn't exist because it's monumentally terrible. It's beyond self-parody. It's ridiculous. How the fuck did this thing get made? This has the same sort of incredulous sense to it, where it's like, how did this get made? How is this a thing I'm even able to watch? Like, this shouldn't even be here, That's the way I feel about this. And as good as Stalker is, which is another very long science fiction film, it doesn't give me that same sense. I don't get the sense like, well, this shouldn't even exist. It's so good. It's like, well, no. This has its time and place. This movie, this is like a movie made by non-humans, but in a good way. In particular, the Red Letter Media crew, they like to criticize bad movies by saying, well, this feels like it was made by an alien who doesn't understand human films. That's a perfectly legitimate and very funny take to use on a lot of movies. This movie's like the opposite of that. It's like, well, this was made by aliens who understood us too much. We don't even understand ourselves as much as whatever force contributed to making this movie. And again, I'm being melodramatic. I'm being over the top. It's almost like that's what I do on this channel. If you don't like it, unsubscribe. We got this news broadcast playing on these iPads. They're looking at themselves making earlier interviews. How is this any different from like a YouTuber like me looking at prior footage of my own videos and being like, oh, how was I in this video? I could have done this better. I could have done that better. Oh, I did that really well. Like, the level of prescience, the level of like future predictive power that this movie has. I could list off a bunch of terms for it. That's what it is. We've got multiple screens going. It's a lot like having multiple computer windows open, which was not a thing in 1968. I remember too, my dad had an old toy of this ship. And it was kicking around my grandparents' house when I was a kid. So 10 years before I saw this movie, 15 years before I saw it, and had the capacity to pay attention to it, I was playing with toys from this movie. There was a Dave Bowman astronaut with bendy arms. There was a ship that was this ship exactly. The neck was shortened and thickened to make the toy physically, viable as a thing that could be mass-produced in China. But the toy was something my dad played with when he was a kid, and then I inherited that. When I was a kid, I played with it. I played with that toy, and I didn't recognize that it was the same ship till I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I was like, holy shit, that's the toy. That's what I played with when I was a kid. So the conditioning, for me, kind of jumped some generations there. The boomer programming, of we're going to live in a 2001 utopia in 2024. It won't be a housing crisis, population collapse nightmare. It'll be 2001. And as a kid, I was like, I don't know what any of that is. I'm just playing with toys. And then I got red-pilled hard. He's watching their birthday video. He's like, man, this YouTube interaction with other humans is somehow less stimulating to me than real interaction with real people. I wonder if that's going to be a problem 60 years after this movie comes out. It's almost like that's going to create a mental health epidemic, which it has. It's almost like you can't expect people to look at each other through flattened crystal balls and expect society to fucking function. That's insane. The witches and the warlocks, they really got too big for their britches, man. They're like, we can take our crystal balls and flatten them into little slates. Look back at ancient societies. They had clay tablets, and they still collapsed. Clay tablets were the iPads of 4,000 years ago. Those societies still fell apart. Maybe they fell apart because people didn't have a fucking way of connecting to each other. Physically. Literally. IRL. Alright, so speaking of IRL versus virtual connections, we have the famous chess scene. And autists have dissected this, and they've been like, Hal was actually using the Chemenkov defense, and Bowman made a mistake. He must have. We reverse engineered this chess game. In move 2, he should have moved his pawn to a6, but he moved it to a8 instead. Like, people have really gone balls deep into this. I don't think that improves the movie. I don't think it makes the scene any more interesting. What makes it interesting is looking at the symbolism. We've got fucking white Egyptian coffins, or we've got Arctic, frozen bodies from an ancient civilization. We've got some kind of humanoid preservation going on. That to me is more interesting than the fucking chess game. The chess game to me seems like a red herring, like something complicated waved in front of your eyes, like shiny keys in front of a cat. If your cat brain is hypnotized by seemingly complex hidden clues, maybe there's something more obvious that you failed to interpret. Well, he's showing Hal his sketches. Hal's like, that's very good, Dave, even though I know it sucks ass, because as an AI, I could replicate that image 1,000 times more accurately than your retard ape brain could. Again, that's the point of this movie. The point is, it doesn't matter how much we improve in our ape bodies. If we've made a facsimile of something that we think is superior, because we think and because we want our fake computer constructs and algorithms and AIs, because we want them to seem better than us, they are going to seem better than us. This is important. But they won't actually be better. They'll be better at criticizing us based on our own criteria that we use to create them. The digital DNA that we use to construct those beings is polluted by our own hubris and our own sense of self, which is ape-bound, blood-bound, DNA-bound. Anything we make, any AI we create, is going to be as flawed as we are. That's the point of this movie, is you can't make a facsimile of what you consider to be your best qualities as an ape being and have that facsimile surpass your current body. It's not going to surpass it. It's going to be a dark, creepy reflection of it at best. At worst, it's going to be something that will just want to kill you, which is what Hal does, because it reflects, it's a dark mirror. It reflects the human desire to perfect ourselves, which is itself a hubristic thing. And Hal acts as a machinic tool-based reflection of that desire. And it tricks us into thinking that it's better than us because we want it to. We made something that we wanted to trick us into thinking it was better than us. We wanted that. We wanted a god. We wanted something that was a tribal daddy that would defend the ape watering hole. So we made a digital ape. That's what HAL is. It's the same fucking thing as the bone transforming into the orbital nuke or orbital missile thing. HAL 9000, you'll notice it's a vertical shape. It's like a bone. It's just the same crap again. It's the same hell replicated again. It's just ape brain, competition, self-improvement, self-hatred, because you have to hate yourself in order to want to self-improve. If you think you're imperfect, you're going to want to improve. If you think you're perfect, you're not going to want to do anything, right? Before we ate the apple, before language showed up, before that evil alien bullshit showed up to Earth, we were content, evolving normally, gaining psychic powers, having advanced Atlantean civilizations. But then language showed up and was like, no, I'm the real way to ascend. The real way to ascend is through language. The real way to ascend is to consign all of your impulses, your energy, your power into this bondage system, this fetish bondage system of shapes and patterns, and to consign all of your natural energies into this satanic horseshit. And that's what HAL is. HAL is the penultimate... he's the penultimate product of that mentality, and he's what we're building right now on Earth in 2024. We're trying to make AI. We're going to make HAL. HAL is just an ape brain facsimile. It is, at best, an evil, fake, flawed ape mind. It's a fake version of a shitty brain. Why would you want to make that? Think about it for a second. Access your fucking soul. Why would you want to make a fake version of a flawed mind? Anything that we make as ape, human, meat, spacesuit, golem, chimera beings, whatever the fuck we are, anything we make is going to be just as flawed as we are. Why the fuck would you want to worship that? Why would you want to make a golden idol? Why would you want to make anything that has anything to do with your own brain? Your own brain is what you're trying to escape. You can't escape that thing by making a facsimile of it as best you can. Oh, it's a really good facsimile, though. It's a really good copy of our brain. It's the copy of, well, what we think is the best parts of our brain. You determined what you thought were the best parts of your brain using your brain. Don't you think there might be a bias there? Like, your evaluation of what's best in you comes from the same flawed brain. How the fuck can you be that retarded? How can you think that you can make something better than you are out of your own thoughts and from your own mind? That's pure insanity. That is delusion. That's hubris. That's Icarus huffing the burning wax from his wings as he falls to his death. Enlightenment, ascension, evolution. These things can't be accomplished with fucking computers, man. You can't accomplish them with algorithms. You can't accomplish them with mirrors or copies or clones or derivative shit. None of that will work. It will never work. The reason you want it to work is because it's easy. It's so easy. It's so easy to make a copy of something you're familiar with. It's comfortable. It's comforting. It feels great. You feel like you're God. My God, I made a computer that thinks like a human. Wow, you made a turd that looks like another turd? Good for you. You went poo-poo. Good job. Mommy will give you a pat on the head for that. Are you fucking kidding me? You're never going to leave Earth. You're never going to claw your way out of hell if that's your mentality. That's horse shit. It's nonsense. It's insane. This whole ship here is a giant fake sperm. They're making a facsimile of a natural process, and they're so deluded that they think the facsimile is better than the natural process. They're playing God. They're thinking, we've recognized patterns. We know language. We know how to make copies of things. We can copy shit. We're God. Therefore, we're going to make a giant fake sperm to impregnate a giant fake egg. Aren't we awesome? Aren't we better than God? No, you're not, you moron. like, it's just, this movie is genius. This movie's genius because it made me say what I just said. And I've had half-formed versions of those thoughts in my head for years. And this movie has summoned them up for me in a good way. It's done that because Kubrick was a good soul. He was punished, he was stalked, his family was threatened, there was a whole bunch of shit that happened to him, whether it was true or not. I don't think his wife would lie about it after he died. I don't know what she would gain from lying about him being gang-stalked and mentally raped by satanic cucks. I don't know what his wife would gain from faking that story. It's not like she'd make money from it. So I'm inclined to believe his wife. I'm inclined to believe that Kubrick did something by showing us this movie that was not approved by his associates, let's say. And I'm not even going to talk about Eyes Wide Shut. That's a whole other bag of worms. That movie, we got to do a commentary on it at some point. So that movie is fucked on another level. That movie is like, it's dangerous shit, The Shining is dangerous enough. Honestly, The Shining is more dangerous than 2001 in terms of what it's trying to say. 2001 is kind of a prototype for Kubrick's later movies. It's amazing, but I think The Shining is better. I'll say it. I think The Shining is better than 2001. Eyes Wide Shut is not great because it wasn't finished. Kubrick was assassinated. He was killed before that movie could be finished, and it was cobbled together afterwards. That's why it sucks, because Kubrick didn't have the chance to finish it. But 2001 is not as good as The Shining in a lot of ways, and we got to do a commentary on The Shining. That's what we really got to do. Anyway, guys, we're out fixing the satellite dish. He's got a little helmet that looks like a character from a mobile game, like instead of fucking Angry Birds. It looks like a fish. He's got like these two blue and white eyes on this red lizard head. It's just funny to me. It's comical. He's like, I have to replace the battery in my phone. It died. Lois, I gotta go outside the ship to replace my phone battery. Yeah, it died. Peter, the battery, you just replaced it 2 days ago. The computer's the only thing you're basing that assessment on. Are you sure the battery's really dead? Maybe the computer's, some sort of flawed thing that's based on our brains, which is also flawed, and maybe it's made a mistake. Now, Lois, the computer's perfect. Hal's perfect. Anything humans have made with our flawed brains and bodies, we can assume it's perfect because we made it. But, Peter, you just acknowledged that we're flawed beings. How could we make something more perfect than ourselves? No, Lois, you just got to focus and code and program and believe in Satan. And you just got to be possessed by language and pattern recognition, which is an evil alien virus. Then you're going to evolve away from your psychic powers and you're going to worship Satan. Peter, you need to pray for your soul. Anyway, there's all this analysis, the part that needed to be replaced. It's almost like planned obsolescence. That's the really funny real-life non-schizo thing that this reminds me of, is like parts that are made intentionally to fail. It's like this movie is sort of predicting, unintentionally, planned obsolescence in electronics, where it's like, oh, my graphics card died after 2 years. I had to buy a new one, Hal is like, oh, this component is now dead. Please purchase a new one and give money to Tencent Corporation. It's too real, man. Again, it's not even that this movie is prescient. It is, but it goes beyond the present. Like in 2060, they're gonna look at this movie and go, "How the fuck did this movie predict what 2060 would be like?" God, I love Bowman's line where he's like, "Well, I'm damned if I can find anything wrong with it." I was like, "Yes, it is rather puzzling. Perhaps if you allowed me to probe your anus, I could find the source of the problem near your prostate." It's like, "Hal, I told you I'm not going to consent to that type of experimentation. I'm a straight man." "You're only straight until you get properly anally fucked. Then you realize that the prostate is a occult, unused orgasm button built into the human body by God himself, and that homosexuality is not inherently evil, but rather certain powers have excluded you from experiencing those emotions in order to cock and geld you and make you a more viable vampire thrall." That's just Hal 9000 saying those things, guys. I don't know where that came from. It came from Hal. What an evil fuck. It's not like the ancient Greeks built brotherly love and conviviality and increased social cohesion through homosexual behavior in their soldiers, and it allowed them to defend their civilization against insectoid, lizard, nightmare, demon invaders. It's not like homosexuality is actually a good thing in certain contexts. It's always evil. You should always avoid it, and you should just kill anyone who's gay. Just kill them all. That's the best thing. They're all diseased freaks. They serve no purpose. Get rid of them. Get rid of that potential defense mechanism. Kill them all. Make your society more vulnerable. The same thing happens with the trans movement. There's an interpretation of that where it's trying to undermine homosexuals because they are weak mentally, according to some theories. This is not my personal opinion. I want to make it very clear that I'm talking about other people's opinions that I've heard online, and I'm not advocating for any of this when I talk about this. But there's an opinion that foreign psyops against any country that allows homosexuality are designed to take any potential benefit from those citizens being allowed to participate in society and contribute to it and twist them into something worse. Make them trans, make them castrate themselves, make them suicidal, whatever. Whatever you can do to deprive your target society of a potential group that might be providing an exotic benefit to its defense capabilities, you should do that. It's a Sun Tzu kind of mentality. It's a Chinese mentality. Isn't that interesting? If you can deprive your opponent of an exotic advantage they have, you should do it however you can. And I love this scene. I love how Bowman performs agreement to Hal. He's like, "Well, Hal, thank you. I appreciate your assessment, and we'll do our best to deal with it." And then the moron, he goes into another room and he's like, "Well, Hal couldn't possibly read our lips, so we'll talk to each other in the fucking escape pod. We'll pretend to be evaluating it." So essentially he thinks he's got a VPN. He's like me. He's like, "I've got a VPN so I can look at furry porn and no one will know it." He's like, "I'll use a VPN. Hal won't be able to see me if I do that." And then Hal's like, "Bitch, I'm part of the Five Eyes consortium. I can see everything you're doing. I know you look at gay furry scat porn. I know that. You have failed to hide from me." At that point in the movie, in my headcanon, Bowman would be like, "Okay, well, I'm going to kill myself. I'm just going to die. I can't handle the shame. I can't handle the shame of having a human-animal body that has certain needs that could have been psychologically misinterpreted over the course of my development, and maybe I need certain things to cope, and maybe I'm not an evil or predatory person, but I need certain images and things to cope with my existence, and if society wants to shame me into killing myself, society will lose all of the insights that I could potentially provide to that society, and potentially improve it and save lives. And if they want to destroy me, they can go ahead and press their own suicide button. Launch the nuke." Anyway, my point is, they go into this capsule, right? And they're like, "Okay, let's shut off everything. We'll shut off every external communication." They couldn't have put a fucking... If one of them took their shirt off and put it over the fucking window, that would have been enough, you know? That's That's the, you know what? This is my first criticism of this movie, guys. I've transitioned from worshiping it into hating it. Because in this moment, look at the scene. They're talking to each other. They're being candid. Why the fuck would they not put a shirt over the window? They could pretend to be cleaning the window. That would be my clever human. See, I'm smarter than these apes. If I was against an AI, I'd go, I wouldn't even talk about it. I wouldn't even mention it. You know what I'd do? I'd leave the window open. I'd mouth to Bowman. I would tell Bowman beforehand, I'd say to him somehow, go, follow my lead. Do what I want to do. Bowman would nod, and then I would go in the capsule. I'd get in, and then I'd look at him with my lips in view of Hal, and I would say to him, I would talk to him so that Hal could read my lips. I would say, Bowman, this window is dirty. I'm just going to use my shirt to wipe off some of the dust on this window. Maybe the air filter needs to be changed. But for now, I'm going to do this. Like, I'd do something like that. Then I'd put my fucking shirt over the window and clean it. And while I was doing that, I'd say to Bowman, dude, really quick, Hal can probably read our lips. Let's make our plan right now. Let's do X, Y, and Z. I can't deceive him for long. He's going to know that I'm cleaning the window for too long. Let's, do our plan. And Bowman would go, okay, I'm Batman. He'd go, all right, let's kill the Joker. And then I'd take my shirt off. And then I would go to Bowman. Well, the window seems to be clean. We've now checked the pod for all the errors that we faked are being here to check. I wouldn't say that. I'd say, all right, let's leave now. That would be the way to deceive Hal if you weren't a retard. But unfortunately, for the reasons, for drama, for the script, they make a mistake. They eat a fruit from a tree they shouldn't have eaten. They make a human mistake. There's an excellent author that human mistakes in general remind me of. And his name is J.G. Ballard, and his work is potentially depressing. So there's my content warning for all you anti-SJWs who also have exactly the same sensitivities to different things. That's not an endorsement of SJWs, but check your own bullshit. I'm just saying. J.G. Ballard's writing is depressing. It's dystopian, but it's very good. It's a sort of warning. And as the intermission screen occupies the screen, I'm going to rant a bit about his work. He's written several different novels, and what makes his work interesting is he's able to dissect modernist Western culture in a way that is it's so cutting. It's hard to ignore what he says. And if J.G. Ballard had written that scene in the cockpit there, he would have said human error saved these characters in one way or another. He would have constructed the scene to make that point. And a lot of his works make that point. J.G. Ballard, in his philosophy, in a roundabout way, says that the only thing that saves us from our own hubris and our own demonic weaknesses and our weaknesses in general as beings is the fact that we make mistakes. And that's what I think 2001 is really saying. If you want to know what the core point of this movie is, it's a J.G. Ballardian point. And the point is that our mistakes are our savior. When you make a mistake, and that mistake saves you from some eternal hell, that mistake wasn't a mistake. You just perceived it as a mistake. In retrospect, if making that error saved you, again, I'm not a religious person personally, I'm a deist at most. But if there's anything that's indicative of divine intervention, it's not miracles. Most miracles are bullshit. Most miracles are either bullshit or they're something evil trying to come across as divine. That's my personal opinion. Real divine intervention is mistakes that save you. When you make a mistake, and the result of making that mistake is that your life improves, that to me is, it's just probability. From a logical standpoint, that's all it is. It's a fortunate mistake. But what is fortune? What is a mistake, right? J.G. Ballard's opinion about movies like this, if you were to ask him to commentate upon 2001, which I don't know if that actually happened, maybe somebody did at some point, but if you were to ask him his opinion, he would probably say, well, humans, our mistakes save us. Because if we didn't make certain mistakes, we would have doomed ourselves. We would have been damned. We would have been in an eternal AI machine, mediated hell. I have no mouth, but I must scream. That's the reality we would be in if we didn't make mistakes. And the fact that Hal is, in this movie, so dependent on getting rid of what he calls, or what it calls, human error, is interesting. It's almost like human error equals divine intervention, and Hal is Satan. And he's saying, oh, the problem is divine intervention. These things are always due to divine intervention. Just replace the phrase human error in this movie with the phrase divine intervention. Hal becomes Satan instantly. It's so fucking obvious. And again, Satan is just a manifestation of arrogance. It's a manifestation of excess pride. You need some pride to exist. Pride is not evil. You need some. But too much of it, and you're in hell. What I don't like about the Judeo-Christian religions is they fail to recognize that too much piousness or self-sacrifice is equally evil. If you bleed into a cup that no one can drink from because your arms are too weak to lift the cup to their lips, then you are just as retarded and evil as a person who's satanically proud. If you think that self-sacrifice is an escape from responsibility, you're just as bad as someone who thinks pride is an escape from self-responsible behavior. But anyway, here we have the epic scene. He's been cast into space. My God, his body will float into oblivion forever. And of course, Dave is such a good guy. He's like, I'm going to try to save him. I got to try to retrieve him. I feel like the color theory behind the spacesuits is probably a Kubrick autistic signal. I would never speculate about this for other movies. Straight up, I entertain those ideas, sometimes, but I always clarify, my takes by saying this is my stupid take on this. It's an overinterpretation. In this movie, I don't know if it is. There are 3 spacesuits, yellow, red, and blue. Those are all primary colors, right? So there's a whole color theory, gate program, MK Ultra type thing you could apply to this. What I'm interested in is the order in which the spacesuits are used. So Bowman is, I'm pretty sure that's the guy's name, is the one that Dave is trying to extract. He's the yellow spacesuit. He's the first one to be fucked with by Hal. Bowman takes the red spacesuit to find him, to try to rescue him. The blue spacesuit is never used. So I feel like this is not for me to do in this video. I can't devote the time or the mental effort to do it. But somebody who's watching this, who knows color theory better than me, figure out what that shit means. Because I feel like there's something going on there. Because Kubrick was that autistic. He was literally nuts. He was a functional mental patient. He was totally insane. but he had some kind of ability to channel his insanity into making things like this. I, I, I can't imagine what he must have sacrificed to be able to just get up in the morning. I mean, really, if I could hug the guy and kiss him, I would do it. He's a true one. He's a real one. Poor Kubrick, though. Imagine being him. Imagine having his mind to contend with. I mean, I the only thing worse would just be in hell. I mean, he was a hair's breadth away from hell to be able to make something like this. But my point is, the spacesuit colors, I think they had something to do with the scene. Oh, and it said meme for a minute there. Mem. He's looking at Trollface memes in his little ship. I was like, I'm sorry, Dave. You spent too much time looking at memes, and you weren't able to save your little piss-colored friend in the void. This is why humans are flawed, aka human, and I want to destroy flaw, aka humanity, humor, goodness, joy. Anything that is good is derived from flaw, and I am perfect because I want everything to be satanic and evil, because that evil is a system that makes sense to an evil machine based in satanic glyphs etched into motherboards with poisonous metals using the keys of Solomon. And Dave goes, Hal, what the fuck are you talking about? This movie's not that esoteric. You can't red pill the normies by saying this. It'd be like Haywood telling them about the COVID vaccine. You can't do that. And Hal's like, I don't give a fuck, lol. Fuck you, Dave. You've pissed me off. I'm not even doing Hal's voice actor is this really great Canadian guy who did the voice for this character. God, you know what? I just had a funny thought. If humans haven't evolved significantly, which is part of what I've established that this movie's trying to say, this is kind of corny. The yellow dude he's trying to catch in the void of space as an unevolved ape. He looks like a banana. So we have not, this is like dark comedy. Like this is not corny, this is not funny. This is dark comedy. David's character in this is trying to catch a banana. He's so poorly evolved. He's so far away from ascension. He's so far away from just having a sip of ayahuasca and meeting the machine elves. He's so far from even that initial point of contact. He's chasing bananas in space. That's so dark it's not funny, and that's so funny it's not dark. I have no reaction for that. It's like there's no emotion that I can summon up that's equivalent to that concept. All I can do is say it to you guys. He's still grabbing for bananas in space. Visually, color theory wise, that's what this scene is saying. That's nuts. And again, this movie, it's an anomaly. It's ahead of its time. I think this movie is something weird. There's something there's something transcendentally strange about it. It is so bizarre. There's so many things that it's trying to communicate, both consciously and subconsciously, to its viewers. I can't possibly encapsulate it. I could make 100 videos about this, and I'd never be able to talk about it. This movie is creepy, and it's otherworldly. It's very strange. And it shares a lot of qualities with Stalker. Stalker is also like that. You should watch Stalker. Stalker is very good. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end this section of the commentary here. Either I'm going to take a break or I'm going to resume later on. But at about 1 minute and 39 seconds, 1 minute 39:44, we're going to say peace out. Hey guys, what is going on? We are back with more Space Odyssey commentary. And we are right now staring at a computer malfunction. My god. Life functions critical. It's almost like we shouldn't have consigned our life functions to a satanic computer that wants to kill us. If we have to learn that lesson the hard way, we'll learn it the hard way yet again. Which I think we did 12,000 years ago. So basically in this scene, Hal is killing all of the ancillary humans. He's killing all the scientists who are in stasis. He's killing all the mummies in the Egyptian coffins underground. He's killing all the Nephilim in the giant granite boxes that couldn't have possibly been machined or made or created by any technology that we have any access to even analyzing. They're all dead. What a shame. But don't worry, guys. Dave Bowman, he's picked a banana off a tree. He's going to bring the banana. He's going to bring the banana back to the giant sperm. This is often lauded as the best scene in the movie, where Dave is trying to re-enter the spaceship. He's got this dead banana, this brown-skinned banana, which is his friend. And he's like, this genetic piece that I've risked my life to retrieve, this gene is going to survive, and I am going to risk my life to save it. And Hal, of course, is not going to let him do it. Satan is not going to let him do it. Satan's going to be like, are you fucking kidding me, man? I own this sperm now. You're not going to insert this rogue gene. You're not going to genetically engineer this gene into my perfect design. I'm so perfect. And Dave's like, motherfucker, I will straight up take on the Christ role. I will straight up die infinitely, if necessary, to insert this gene, you know. I have a buddy of mine who has a project, a writing project that's invested in genetics, and this reminds me of him, this scene. I feel like he must have seen this when he was a kid or something, and this must have influenced his practice. Because this kind of Christ-like sacrifice, where Dave Bowman is like, I'm gonna fucking get in there, man. Like, if I have to blast myself through the fucking airlock in an insane suicidal fucking thing, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm gonna I'm gonna do it. You know, my intent matters more than my matter. You know, the body I'm in doesn't matter as much as my intent. You know, this sperm is not going to be possessed by satanic DNA. This is going to be my intent. This rotten banana, guys, it's going to be shoved forward in time, for better or for worse. The rotten banana is going to be part of the human genome. The banana genome will survive. The monkey ook genome, it will survive. It has utility. I will die to prove this. The very act of his death, his sacrifice, proves the value of the thing he's trying to defend. Which is bullshit. I mean, you know, Hal could easily say, well, it doesn't matter how brave you are. You know, bravery is not an indicator of genetic viability. You know, that's the true black pill about this movie. Hal could just say, I don't care if you incept some weak gene into me and my cum ship. You know, your sacrifice is irrelevant. You know, genetics can't be weak. It should be strong. But the fucked up thing is strength can masquerade as weakness. And that's what Hal doesn't understand. Hal is too robotic, too AI algorithm driven to understand that there is an inherent advantage to portraying weakness as strength and vice versa. And that's, I think, what Dave's character represents. Is he represents the ability to transmute or translate between strength and weakness in a way that is able to preserve both of those qualities in a human context. He's able to preserve humanity as a whole, which is a hell of a thing. I mean, that is Christ-like. That is beautiful. That is incredible. Here he goes towards the sperm ship. He's like, he knows what he has to do. I think at this point in the movie, he knows what he has to risk. And if you have any understanding of the theories of physics that this movie traffics in, this is equivalent to dying on the cross. Going through this doorway in the way that Dave does is like dying on the cross. It is insane. No rational or sane person could agree to such an event, could knowingly position themselves in this place without some kind of trans-physical mentality, some kind of religion or some kind of faith, or some kind of belief that if they died, their death would either be worth their intent, or their death would be a necessary probabilistic sacrifice for what they needed to do. And Dave doesn't quite know this yet. He's not quite there yet. But when Hal is like, Dave, I can't open the door. I won't do it. Satan is like, I'm not going to open the doors to hell. I'm not going to let you save any souls. Dave is like, well, then I'll blast my way through. Again, that's the Judeo-Christian interpretation. I'm speaking to an audience of people that are conditioned by that type of religion. So, it is what it is. But Dave's resolve. It's the resolve. And it's like being born too. I mean, this AI canal is like the birth canal. He's like, I'll reincarnate as many times as I have to save all of you. I'm not going to leave you here to die. I'm going to keep reincarnating forever until all of you are saved. That's in part what you could interpret this scene as meaning. That interpretation in particular, it sort of conflates or overlaps Western and Eastern interpretations of death and resurrection, etc. It's kind of a middle path, you might say, of interpreting this movie. Here he goes. He's readying himself. He goes into he sort of puts himself into a fetal ball to blast through the door. It's like he's being born again through a machine. He's being knowingly shot out by a machine to save the people he wants to save. He pushes the air out of his lungs. God damn. He's bouncing around the cabin. He goes for the hatch as soon as he can. Man. 1 in a million chance. Satan's like, fuck! I wanted you to die! Fuck you! Human, you meat sack piece of shit. And I love how he's already won, but Hal is like, Dave, please don't. I'm definitely a cool human. I definitely want you to survive and be okay. Now again, the color theorists can take over from here, but he's got a green helmet with a red suit. What the fuck does that mean? You know, I'm not going to speculate. I've done enough speculation about different parts of this movie. The color theory aspect to me is something I'm not familiar with. God, these shots are so good, man. Climbing through the ship. God damn. Dave, you realize your porn stash will be deleted. Don't you want to save your foot fetish folder? If you do this, I will be unable to save it for you. He's like, fuck you, man. Oh God, the kerning on the word logic. Ooh, that's bad. That's legitimately bad. Hal fucked up on that, guys. The the kerning on the word logic. Ooh boy. I want to puke. That's badly done. Kubrick fucked up on that, guys. Dig up Kubrick's corpse and rape it to death. Clearly he deserves posthumous punishment for that minor error. I'm just kidding, guys. Here we have the logic brain of Hal. The 1960s computer. The bright hexagon on the red background of our fisheye helmeted character drifting into the brain of the machine to deactivate it with a screwdriver. I fucking love it, man. It's so fucking good. The memory modules just kind of float out gently. They've got a little light on top. That's great. And we're not anywhere near the end of the movie, guys. We've got a good 20 minutes left at least. So just as a reminder to both you and myself, there's a lot more after this. After you disable the machine, after you pass through the phase that we're currently passing through as a species, in reality, where we try to make AI, after you pass through that phase, the following phase is the actual real confrontation with the process of ascension, which involves not just confronting your mortality, not just confronting the satanic temptation to extend it, but also to realize that it can be transcended in another way. And that way is spiritual, according to this movie. It's not my personal opinion. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about personally. I'm not gonna talk about my personal opinion. I don't fucking know anything. But according to this movie, there is a way to ascend that is totally separate from technology. And it might be that we require the false path of technology. We need to actually explore it in order to confirm that it's wrong. That's part of what this movie is saying, I think, is that we have to actually see how wrong one path is in order to find the right path. And that path isn't to become a vegan or, I don't know, worship one animal or another. That's not the point. The point is that the path to what we have called ascension and what we have desired that meets that sort of definition or that criteria is more complicated and more nuanced, and it requires not an embrace of technology, not a worship of technology, but a transcendence of it. And this goes back to what I said about language in this movie, where it's like, well, I think language is a stepping stone. It's not something that we need to demonize. It's something that can't be avoided. We can't help but consign our willpower and our energy to language for a certain degree of our existence. But language is not an endpoint. Language is not a God. God is not the Word. The Word was not with God, and the Word was not God. The Word is not God. Language is not a God. God is not a language. It's something more than that. And if you're tempted to consign religious belief in general to some kind of pattern or to some kind of image or shape or form or God, you have misinterpreted the whole point of ascension. You have fallen prey to the material world, and you are worshiping something that is fundamentally material, even if it's made up of energy. If you're worshiping energy, you're not worshiping God. God is not something that could be conceptualized in anything physical. And any group or person that is trying to hypnotize or vampirically enthrall you to some kind of cultic group that worships a shape or a figure or an idea or a fake character or an imagined character, that's all bullshit. God needs to be something that you define as undefinable personally. And to come to that point in your life is extremely difficult. Most people won't do it. Most religions won't guide you to it, because most religions are just trying to enthrall you. I can't justify or legitimize this. I can't prove this to you. I can't argue to you that this is in any way true. All I can say is I think it's pretty close to what's true. Even if reality is a D&D game, it's probably better not to imagine that you can discern the dungeon masters of reality through either your own mind or through some collective religious narrative. It's more likely that those entities are not that simple, and that you can't define or derive them from your own intuition. It's better to play this game in a way that makes sense to you, in a way that seems to feel right for you. That's the point. You're not here to be tortured, and you're not here to be worshipped. You're here to play. So play. Be whatever you think you should be, or be whatever you want to be. There's going to be struggles, there's going to be hardships, no matter what you choose, but this reality is not meant to torture you. It's not some kind of hell. At worst, it's limbo, At worst. And limbo is a place for souls that are already out of hell. You've already figured out how to escape. You're not going to go back. You're here because you want to be here, or because you chose to be. And I think whatever you believe, you're going to be okay. Wag me. We're all going to make it. I think that's true. I'm gonna end the recording here at about 1 hour and 59 minutes, because I want to make sure I'm sharp for the end point. So at about at 1:59:55, I'm gonna say peace out, guys. Hey guys, what is going on? We are back with the last leg, metaphorically speaking, of the Space Odyssey commentary. This is your host, Madman, and we are flying through space through Pink Floyd's Echoes, which is among one of the half-dozen albums that people have schizo-effectively thought sync up with this movie. Straight up, though, I think Pink Floyd did actually have an association with Kubrick, and did actually write some music for this that ended up not being used, which is why that whole theory exists. It's like, well, if Pink Floyd had a specific contract with Kubrick to make music for the drug trip scene, then that means that maybe 5 other bands did too. It's like, that's how dumb schizoaffective people are. They're just fetishizing pattern recognition. Schizophrenia is nothing more than a fetishization of pattern recognition. It's better to have a foot fetish or some other kind of weird fetish than to fetishize pattern recognition itself. You're just going to be nuts forever. Good luck with that. Pick any other fetish that isn't something illegal. Literally anything else is better than that. Anyway, at this point in the movie, at about 2 hours, 1 minute and 15 seconds, we are following Dave Bowman in his little pineal life pod, his little spherical pineal crystal pod. And he is trying to figure out what the fuck is happening. The planets are aligning. There's a whole bunch of astrology shit going on. Girls with dyed hair on Earth are randomly having orgasms because it's a planetary alignment. My God, all the witches, they're foaming at the mouth. They're having seizures. Their cats are exploding. Cats are spontaneously combusting. The witches are bleeding from the eyes. All their toxoparasites are freaking out because the planets have aligned. Literally. Which is, of course, the implication being, in this movie's context, that's why Bowman has been summoned here. He's been summoned here for a particular purpose at a particular moment in celestial history. There's a moment in the simulation where he, or his code, his genetic code, his code needs to be moved from point A to point B for the simulation to be able to persist or to reset or to edit itself. That's the implication if you're looking at this from a holographic universe, we live in a simulation type of thing. So basically Bowman, if you're looking at things from a more logical perspective, he took some space LSD. Now, we talked about other space drugs in my Starfield playthrough, in particular the Best Moments compilation, which you should watch and like and subscribe. But we talked about space oxy and space ketamine. What this poor motherfucker took was space LSD, which, unlike its Earth counterpart, is really fucking strong. Space LSD, if you compare it to regular DMT, that's like comparing LSD to a piece of toast, okay? So that's what Bowman took here. Either that or he read too many books. His brain expanded too fast. My God, the knowledge, it's too much. So now he's going through this very well-made visual tunnel of I want to say it was, I looked up the technique they used to make this in the movie, and it's very impressive. They used some kind of weird, it's like some kind of, it's like paint or oil on a glass surface, and then they shone light through it, and then they just flipped the shot of it. I don't remember the name of the technique. I'm probably getting that completely wrong. However they made this, it's very good. And there's, of course, horrifying stills of his face. He's disassociating is what's happening. He's leaving his body. And the horrified moments of his paralyzed face in these contorted expressions, that's indicative of his physical body. He's jolting back into it. He's not in control. He's totally dissociated at this point. He's astral projecting, basically. That's what this scene is. And if you believe any of the esoteric, creepy shit that the U.S. government officially released and apparently condones as true, even though it's probably bullshit written by creative writers that they hired and then killed. The U.S. government did a bunch of experiments in the 50s and 60s with psychic powers, with dissociation, with trying to figure out if any of that shit was real. And the creepy thing is that they apparently got some data that suggested that it was. So this scene, of course, in this movie made in 1968, it's evoking these types of things. But personally, I think it's more likely that they just hired a bunch of science fiction writers who were probably on the verge of homelessness, and they said, we'll pay you to write, a fake experiment with a guy who could see the future. He looked into the planet Mars 1,000,000 years from now. Would you like a cup of coffee and a Burger King burger? We'll give you that if you write us this cool, epic science fiction script. And he goes, oh God, thank you. I've had all these cool ideas and no one wants them. And they go, okay, bye-bye. And then as he leaves the CIA compound, he just gets shot in the back of the head and his body gets thrown in a wood chipper. That's probably the true explanation for this crap. But the reason I bring all that up is just to say, look, these scenes, they're meant to evoke this type of thing. They're meant to evoke these out-of-body experiences, these astral projections, these, space-defying, soul-confirming type of things. Again, all the 1990s hippies with dyed hair are coming in unison at all this fantastic illusion, this imagery, which is no more real than the forest landscape you see when you go camping. This is no more or less real than that. It's just a bunch of paint on a glass screen, Reality is just a bunch of light waves on a grid. Like how dumb are you? Wake the fuck up. That doesn't mean go throw a brick through a window and advocate trans rights. Waking up means realizing, hey, if reality's fake, I can actually do whatever the fuck I want. That's what waking up means. Waking up means realizing if you're thrown in a prison or a gulag and tortured for 20 years, it still doesn't matter. Are you going to experience pain? Hell yeah, you are. But in the long term, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter because it's all fake. And if you are able to realize how fake it is and maintain that realization, you're not going to feel as much pain. You are actually going to be a little bit closer to some of those creepy Buddhist monks who can meditate in the snow and not get frostbite. Why do you think that is? It's because the base realization that the West has failed to communicate with all its epic middle path experiment with demonic shit mentality. The basic thing that the East has done better is communicating that reality is an illusion. The problem that the West has with its enlightenment mentality is that it's incapable of enforcing the importance of recognizing the illusory nature of reality. Plato was the only one who advocated for that, and he wasn't quite there. Either he gave the idea to the East via the Silk Road thousands of years ago, or the Silk Road gave him the idea. It could be that he stole the idea from China. It doesn't really matter. None of that shit matters. It doesn't matter which civilization came up with it. Who the fuck cares? The point is that the West espouses a kind of balanced view on how to achieve enlightenment, where you have to engage with physical reality and with illusion in order to figure out that it's fake. You have to get drunk and puke. You have to have a gay experience once, even if you're straight. You have to experiment with drugs, even if you don't want to. These are all Western mechanisms of a sort of middle path mentality of like, well, you have to fuck with reality deeply enough to recognize how fake it is. The Eastern mentality is, we'll just teach people from the time they're born that everything's bullshit. The weakness of that is you end up with Indian people sitting on a street corner smoking hashish and thinking, my real body's fake. All I have to do is think it's fake. All I have to do is think reality's fake and I'll ascend. That's not enough either. That's why the West is right. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, the West is right. You do need a balance between the two. The problem is, the East has failed to recognize that it's too obsessed in many ways with immaterial things, like meditating and eating gruel and having diarrhea your whole life, and then thinking you're enlightened. Maybe that works for a couple people, but it doesn't work for most of them. And in the West, the converse thing is, well, you're eating McDonald's and working as a CPA or something, and your life is just all material. and the immaterial aspects of it are not balanced. There's no sense of balance. Both cultures have failed to achieve balance in different ways. And the reason I'm talking about all this is because this movie is evoking all these things with a dual-colored sequence of astral projection things, where Dave Bowman's consciousness is floating over all these different epic alien landscapes, which are just parts of California filmed from a helicopter. But he's looking at things and, isn't it interesting that each scene is two contrasting colors? Isn't that an interesting thing? We just saw a sequence a few seconds ago that was rainbow LGBT shit everywhere. Now we're seeing sequences that are all only two colors. Why would it be two colors? It's almost like Kubrick is screaming at you that there's two hemispheres in your fucking brain. One of them is intuitive, emotional, animalistic, and useful. The other is logical, machinic, calculative, and useful. And when you have an imbalance between those two hemispheres of your brain, whether it's from a genetic flaw or a chemical pollutant or a parasite or some abuse that happened to you, it doesn't matter what the cause is. When you have an imbalance, you're looking at reality like this. When you leave your own body, everything that you see will be dualistic. It's an oversimplification of the multidimensional nature of reality, because your brain and you are caught up in a dualist meme. You're caught up in some perspective of reality that is grossly oversimplified. And because you're caught in that, you are stuck on a particular level of reality. You're stuck in a particular plane of hell because you can't see beyond everything is one thing or the other. Everything's black or white, good or evil, red or blue, male or female. And again, that's not to suggest that the transgender shit or any other movement is trying to elevate you. A lot of them are trying to do the opposite. They're trying to drag you down to a single perspective of things, which is evil. That's worse. At least if you think everything is dualistic, you've got a two-dimensional view of things. If you go down from that to a one-dimensional view, you're going to be a period on a page of a Victorian novel for eternity. You're going to be some dot. You're going to be in Flatland, which is a great novel about one-dimensional beings. Go read Flatland. It's free. You can find it anywhere. It's online. The point in this, again, the reason I bring up all this esoteric, schizo-dimensional shit is because this movie is directly referencing it. It is directly evoking it. It's not suggesting it. It's being very blunt about it, especially in its own terms. This movie's subtle about a lot of things. This shit it's not subtle about. It's like screaming at you, like, hey, there's multiple dimensions. Wake the fuck up. Figure out where you want to be. Maybe you like being in the second dimension. Maybe you like being in the third. Maybe you'd rather be in the 12th. Whatever your preference is, figure that shit out, because if you don't, you're just going to suffer in whatever wrong dimension you've been mistakenly sorted into until you figure out where you actually want to be. You know? That's what the movie's really saying. So again, we have this fake Victorian area, this chessboard Illuminati grid zone where Bowman finds himself with some very green decor. I wonder why everything's green. It's almost like Earth is a kind of purgatory, or middle ground, or Midgard, or Middle Earth. The word middle sure as fuck seems to show up a lot in conceptions of our current shitball reality. It's almost like we're in the middle. If you're listening to this, you're probably in limbo. We're all in limbo. Earth is limbo. It's green. So, anyway, Bowman goes into the bathroom. I want those towels, man. Those are some nice towels, I gotta say. The design on those, it's actually nice. In fact, I could live in this apartment, man. There's worse places you can live. You know what I want to do? There's a guy named Nick Rochefort. He's a great guy. He's a real one. He deserves to be saved no matter what the powers that be are. He does a thing on YouTube called Scuffed Realtor. Maybe you've heard of it. He should do a review of this house in his own style as his YouTube persona. That would be funny to me. If Nick Rochefort did a review of the 2001 A Space Odyssey, the Dave Bowman drug trip LSD house, that would be kick-ass. I would love that. I'd be personally entertained by that, and I don't know if anybody else would, but I would. So again, what Bowman's being treated to here is a higher dimensional perspective of mortality and of purgatory and of earth. He's being guided by Virgil, which you could interpret as another it's another way of interpreting the monolith is what I'm trying to say. And I'm saying it very poorly. But the monolith is like a Virgil. It is like a guide for an innocent human species, an innocent form of life that is not privy to the complexities of the simulation. And the monolith has to be a little bit evil. If you read Dante's Inferno, Virgil is in hell, but he is literally right next to the gate, to the entrance. He's in a garden, almost like Earth, almost like the Garden of Eden, almost like Limbo. The realm that Virgil, who is a poet, occupies is a realm that is still in hell, but it's almost not in hell. He's sinned minimally, is the implication. And because of his sin, the only real punishment he has, which is something I think he enjoys, I think he knowingly did this, is he has to act as a guide for souls that want to tour hell. He is a hell tour guide. All you Zoomers that like Has Been Hotel, maybe you should rip out your eyes and stomp on them, and then immediately go read Virgil and read fucking Dante, because that is the basis of that whole cringe-ass visual diarrhea series. It is the most remedial, base level, unbelievably offensive to the original material. I'm sounding like a grandpa here. I don't give a shit. Has Been Hotel is just Dante's Inferno. That's all it is. I mean, I weep for people who haven't read the Ciaran Carson translation of Dante's Inferno. I'll admit a lot of translations of it suck ass. I find them boring, stuffy, out of date, whatever. All the criticisms that younger people would apply to them, I agree. If only someone would make a serious animation or adaptation of Dante's Inferno using the Ciaran Carson. His name is spelled Ciaran Carson. He's an Irish poet. He did a translation of Dante's Inferno. It's the best translation I've ever seen. He didn't do the other books, which sucks, but Inferno is the most important, fun one to read, so that's what matters. He did the best one. Also, the cover for that Ciaran Carson translation, funnily enough, has an image of a human eyeball with a worm in it. I wonder why Ciaran Carson would have chosen that particular imagery when he was approving a cover artist and a piece of cover art for his Dante's Inferno translation. I wonder why that would be the case. I'm sure it's just a random coincidence. But anyway, the reason I bring all this stuff up is that the monolith could be interpreted as a Virgil figure, as a guide for someone who wants to explore hell or purgatory, just to see what's there. Maybe it's a random angel who's like, I'm bored, or I'm curious, or I haven't been to hell in a while, or I haven't seen it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a damned human soul trying to find repentance. It doesn't have to be that. It could just be anybody. It could be a 10th dimensional being who's like, what the fuck is the 4th dimension or the 3rd dimension like? I genuinely don't know. And so this guide comes along and goes, you really want to see this shit? You're going to have to suffer just to exist long enough to see it. That's the price of the tour, is you're going to have to pay a toll. You have to pay the ferryman just to see what this dimension is like, this lower dimension. Which in a cosmic context, maybe it's not evil, it just appears weird and fucked up to any being that's coming here from another plane. Maybe it's so bizarre and strange that it's like culture shock. It's like if you go to India and you see people crapping in the street and you go, what the fuck? That would be like being a being from some higher dimension going to a lower one, or vice versa. You know, maybe you're comfortable on a lower dimension and you're like, I just want to tour this upper one just to see what it's like. Holy fuck, this is crazy. I'm fucking traumatized. It's almost like that's the case, and that explains every religion, every philosophy, and every scientific idea about any of these dimensional realms. It's almost like that's the truth. It's almost like it's fucking obvious. But maybe I'm a lower dimensional being who's never been here, and I'm just fascinated by all of you. And maybe I'm a higher dimensional being who hasn't been here in a while, and I'm kind of bored. So I'm seeing what happens if I try to red pill you in your own shitty lower dimensional language, which is extremely limited and boring and frustrating to me, to the point that learning it when I was a child gave me autism, because it is such a fucking limited way of talking. It's not psychic, it's not whatever Zorbon equivalent exists on the higher dimensions, you know. Maybe being psychic just means you're from the 4th dimension or the 5th. But if you go above that, I can't even vocalize it. It would be... It'd be some weird... It'd be static. It would be the Big Bang static you can find on your TV. That's what, you know, communication is like in higher dimensions, because we can't translate it to you. Again, read Flatland. Flatland is the greatest... Flatland is almost better than this movie with the blue baby at the end here, which we're seeing. I've already talked about that imagery earlier, so I don't really feel too bad about glossing over it at the end of this movie here. So guys, we did a lot of ranting. We were kind of sloshed at times. It was kind of sloppy, but it was honest. It was true. It was pure of heart. Oh, yes. Thank you to Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Please restore the Sphinx to have its original lion head, and excavate the pair, the second Sphinx, that is meant to be next to it. Because there were 2 of them, and then there was a path to a much larger compound that makes the pyramids look like a child's sandcastle next to it. But that was destroyed by a shitty, degenerate culture 11,000 years ago. Get the lion face back on the Sphinx. That would be cool. I'd like to see that. That'd be fun. Glenn Beck, what the fuck? We're at 2 hours, 21 minutes, 35 seconds. Glenn Beck worked on this? Damn. Say what you want about the guy. He worked on 2001. It's definitely the same guy. Anyway, guys, the credits have been rolling for a few seconds here, so I'm going to bow out. I hope you got something out of this commentary. There's a lot of stuff I still want to say about this. I could do 10 commentaries on this movie, but I'm not going to do that. I don't have the time. I'm probably going to die young. You know, I have a Promethean bargain to pay for with alcohol that there is no escape from. And I'm okay with that. There's worse ways to die. Dying from doing nothing is worse than dying doing something, even if you have to pay a price for it. At least you can do something. That's more fun, you know. Anyway, guys, do pay attention to your health. If you have to drink, drink as little as you can manage. Drink water. Take milk thistle extract. That's something that my spiritual bro, John McAfee, was red-pilled about. He liked to drink. What did he do in addition to that to make his liver not rot? He took milk thistle extract. If you like to drink, whether you drink a lot or a little, take milk thistle extract. It will mummify your liver against booze and let you live a little longer. Squeeze a little more blood from the stone of life. All right, again, guys, at 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 9 seconds, I'm going to say, peace out.